The Fifth and the First, an Adrienette Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction, Part 2. Nino was practically asleep, completely slumped from math class when he was shaken awake by Adrien. The blonde had the brightest grin on his face, and he excitedly shook his shoulders. "Dude, what happened?" Nino said in a whisper. Adrien pointed out behind Nino and made an excited noise. Groggily, Nino turned to look out the window and... Oh, wow! It was snowing! Huh, Nino said. Adrien nodded his head with vim. I guess it is, he continued. It wasn't like Nino hated the snow, not unless it was soaking into his pant leg or in his boots. But, snow just wasn't his ideal weather. Nino fancied short-sleeved t-shirts, and snowy weather called for large jackets and hats, and in his own opinion, he looked like an overgrown penguin bundled up in puffed material. Class dismissed for lunch, but do not forget to read your pages 294 to 316 tonight, the teacher called as everyone rushed to grab their bags and get out of the door as soon as possible. Nino collected his bags and waited outside the door with Adrien for Alia and Marinette. You sure take your sweet time, Nino teased as Alia finally emerged from the classroom. She rolled her eyes but kissed him on the cheek, much to his delight. You love me anyways, she said. And yeah, she was right. Okay, but on a serious note, Marinette said as the four of them walked out towards the outdoor courtyard. Did you guys understand anything our teacher was saying? Oh, goodness. Her shocked expression was probably due to the fluttering white coming from the sky. It was apparent that she hadn't noticed the snow in the same way Adrien had. The latter, in fact, began to bounce on his toes with joy. It's snowing, he cried out the obvious. Marinette smiled shyly at him, blushing pink in a way that made Alia nudge Nino aside with a grin. I'm rather surprised, especially at this time of year, Marinette commented, kneeling down to the ground to pick up a handful of frozen water. You're right. No one would have ever expected this, Alia said. She looked around and frowned slightly. It took a second for Nino to understand why. Just like Nino, no one had expected the ground to be dusted in snow, and thus no one was prepared. Looking around, everyone was avoiding the snow. Unlike Adrien, who was excited for the surprise, everyone seemed to groan and drag their feet, avoiding the snow piles as best they could, and avoiding the patches of snow. And quite honestly, Nino didn't blame them. He wrinkled his nose, stepping out of the snow he was standing in, as his heat had begun to melt it through into his shoes. Oh man, Nino cried out mournfully. The blonde to his side looked around the courtyard, taking in all that was in front of him. Why is everyone running away from the snow? It's so fun, Adrien asked, looking around at the students avoiding patches of white. His expression was that of a fun-loving but confused young child, which was actually a pretty good description of the boy. Doesn't everyone love to toss snow in the air and build snowmen? Adrien asked. Alia shrugged and wiped some snow off the table bench. Sure they do, when they have snow gear on. It's halfway through the day, and if you get soaked now, it's going to be miserable, Alia pointed out, using her fork as emphasis. Nino nodded in agreement. Adrien frowned sadly. Are you sure we can't do anything in the snow now? He said. Nino gave him a smile and swung an arm across his shoulder. Dude, we can hang out after school. We'll just grab our snow boots and coats and make snow angels to mark our territory, Nino said, letting out a large and loud laugh. Adrien, however, smiled disappointedly. I can't do anything after practice. After school, I have practice and lessons. Father ensures that Wednesdays are busy nights since I get off school earlier, he said. Nino frowned at that. He forgot how annoying it was to contend with Adrien's strict schedules. Shoot, man, Nino sighed. That was when Marinette cleared her throat and offered a small smile. I don't think we could make snow angels, but, we could certainly make a snowman. It shouldn't be too hard to make one without getting drenched, she offered, though her tone was wavering slightly. There was a clear sense of determination in her eyes. Alia snickered softly into Nino's side, whispering that it was all coming together, and Nino honestly couldn't have agreed more. Adrien looked so bright and happy and he stared at Marinette like she just hung the sun into the sky. Really? He asked, excitement pouring out of his voice. Marinette bit her lip and nodded. Yay! In a rush, Adrien had pulled Marinette towards the large mound of accumulated and scooped snow off to the side of the courtyard and began to gather a ball in his hands. He seemed rather unbothered by the cold feeling. Well, this is just perfect, Alia chuckled, leaning onto Nino's shoulder as they watched their friends sweetly and innocently make a snowman together. Marinette had fished out 2 pairs of gloves from her purse, and together they had rounded and rolled up a rather nicely sized snowman. Adrien beamed at what the two had created and grabbed a hold of Marinette's hand, no doubt shocking the girl. They are the fluffiest and most idiotic people we have ever met, Nino commented as Adrien and Marinette heaved a second snowball onto the first. It was a lopsided snowman, thin and flat on one side and misshapen on the other. But it was clear that Adrien did not care. Certainly, look at the way he's lighting up now just because she offered to play in snow with him, Alia pointed out. I don't know how that boy doesn't know, but he's been in love with Marinette for as long as she's been in love with him. Those two are practically newlyweds already, she laughed. It's perfect, Adrien cried out, taking a step back to look at his snowman. Okay, in reality, it was anything but. The poor thing hardly had a face, and it had a scrap piece of fabric for a scarf. It didn't matter, though. Adrien pulled Marinette in for a tight hug, and though the girl squealed at first from shock, she eagerly accepted the embrace. Thank you, Marinette. I love our snowman. He's perfect, Adrien said. The love in his eyes were clear as day, and it was hard for everyone else to not notice it. Yeah, I mean, of course, Marinette squeaked. Alia hummed next to him, and Nino turned his head towards his girlfriend. She had a proud look on her face, no doubt pleased with the outcome of the situation. I think they've had enough of a sappy moment. We should show them what a good-looking snowman looks like, Alia laughed, pulling Nino up from the bench. With a grumble but a begrudging smile, Nino got up and followed Alia's lead to their friends. Hey, you two sweethearts, Alia called, making Marinette blush bright red. Adrien, however, was not bothered at all. In some ways, he had no shame and just happily grinned at everything around him. We're going to join in on the fun, too, Alia continued. Nino scooped up a ball of snow, shuddering at the cold. 2 snowmen. It'll look perfect, Nino smiled. Ooh, make it a snow girl, and then it'll be a happy snow couple, Marinette pointed out. Alia nodded and laughed. Good idea. By the end of lunch, there were, in fact, 3 snow figures out in the courtyard. The rest of the student body seemed to joyously laugh and smile at the little trio. The ill-formed snowman and father, he and Alia's admittedly not much better snow mother, and the 4 of them had worked to create a snow child. That was the best looking out of the 3, and it was a proud creation. We're really good at this, Alia laughed, taking a step back to admire their work. The other students and teachers had already come over to coo at the snow people. Even Chloe gave the slightest compliment, not without some backhanded words, that is. Yeah, we're really good at this, Adrien said truthfully. He looked at Marinette, adoration clear in his eyes. Thank you for building the first one with me. I haven't gone to play in the snow for years. It's so much fun building him with you, he said honestly. Marinette stuttered out "You are very welcome." Alia laughed under her breath while Nino grinned at the scene. Adrien was pouring buckets of love to Marinette, while the latter just had no idea how to react. He's so in love with her. Yes, he is.